he's got this reason to have this blindfold on for political reason, for like a political reason, like trying to smooth over the bad blood between the elves and the dwarves. That's why Frodo has this blindfold on.
Right.
So it gives him reason to like not see the beauties of Lothlorien as he's traipsing through it. And then all of a sudden he's able to uncover his eyes right at this huge moment when they're at like the heart of their forest in Caern Amroth. And it's like extra like stunning for Frodo. Yeah. So he looked up and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass as green as springtime in the elder days. Upon it, as a double crown, grew 2 circles of trees. The outer had bark of snowy white and were leafless but beautiful in their shapely nakedness. The inner... Ooh.
Nice.
That's hot.
Sweet.
The inner were malorn trees of great height, still arrayed in pale gold. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all, there gleamed a white flet.
Okay, because the other thing that would make this like that much more stunning is kind of like if you fall asleep on a road trip, like in the middle of the desert, and you wake up, like when you're a kid in St. George, Utah, all of a sudden, like the surroundings are completely different than what you were seeing. You know what I'm saying? Like, what they went into blindfolded, and what they like, it was probably like a completely different, like, you know, flora and fauna, and all of a sudden it's like, oh,
right. For those who don't know the local geography, when you're in Las Vegas, it's or the surroundings of Las Vegas is like the middle of the Mojave Desert. It's like desert wasteland, and then you go north into Utah, and it immediately gets kind of greener and like pine trees and mountains, and you're like, oh, I'm in a different ecosystem.
Right, but I mean, not to, you know, or like I was gonna what I was going to like compare it to is like those nights when we were binge drinking at the sports pub and we walked out and it was like light. Shit.
You can compare to that too. Anyway, Tolkien here at the very end of the paragraph where he's describing what Frodo sees, he's like using almost kind of standard words like white, palest green, a hue of the sky was blue. It's like he's just using kind of standard words like blue and green.
Yeah.
Like he's not using like chartreuse or anything like really unusual. He saw no color but those he knew, gold and white and blue and green, but they were fresh and poignant, as if he had at that moment first perceived them and made for them names new and wonderful. So they were called these standard names, but he was imagining he was seeing some weird new color with a strange name, like Zarsmakabal or Zarahimlabag. So
I probably more related to the when you're, you know, when you first put down paint, or when, you know, you get something brand new, and it's like, wow, this is going to be the greenest it's ever going to be. And because it's only going to fade. Like it did, like the colors haven't faded. But
I mean, there's a few keys I think where it says Frodo says he's looking into a vanished world, or Tolkien says that Frodo's looking into a vanished world, and then lower it says where Sam says, "I feel as if I was inside a song. If you take my meaning, right."
And Haldir did.
But I think the idea of being inside a song is something. And I don't want to belabor it too much, but I think Tolkien was always interested in like the distances. And then when you walk, the distance looks so magical from a distance, like a mountain in the distance. And your mind kind of fills it with wonder and majesty and mystery. And then when you get there, you're like, oh, this is just mere surroundings. It's just like normal. Oh, there's a street, there's a gas station. It's not that impressive. But so a lot of Tolkien's idea of fairy is this idea that you can actually have that, you can enter the distance and have it not lose the magic. So that's why he's inside of a song, or he's inside of a vanished world.
I wonder if, like with Lorien or with Lothlorien, and maybe with Rivendell a little bit, that what he imagined in the distance, like in the distance, like, oh, what is that over there? And you imagine all sorts of things. And when you get to where, when you're at the distance, that you were looking at, that it's like, oh, this isn't that cool. I wonder if this was like, this is the distance that I imagined, and I'm here, and it's what I imagined.
Yeah, and it hasn't lost that luster. It hasn't lost that mystery or whatever. Well, the whole idea of Leaf by Niggle is that he's an artist and he's trying to draw. He starts by drawing a leaf.
Yeah.
And the leaf is so intricate and elaborate. And it turns into a tree that becomes this elaborate painting. But he doesn't want to compromise the detail that he wants to achieve with that painting that tree. So he knows it's going to take up his whole life. So he devotes himself to getting that tree just perfect, right? And then at the end he goes on this journey, and it kind of seems like his journey might be just him dying.
Yeah,
it's left a little ambiguous. And at the end of his journey, he finds his tree. Right. And it says before him, his tree actually in life. It says before him stood his tree finished. If you could say that of a tree that was alive. So he finally saw the tree, and then he ended up kind of going into this distance. He discovered an odd thing. The forest, of course, was a distant forest, yet he could approach it, even enter it, without it's losing that particular charm.
Right.
So again, so
this is kind of going back to what we were talking about.
Not only that, but I think Tolkien also thought that his writing of the Lord of the Rings itself was actually, he says in a letter that him writing Leaf by Niggle. Wait, did I? Yeah. So I have not published any other stories, but Leaf by Niggle, they do not arise in my mind. It was written down almost at a sitting, blah, blah, blah. Looking at it myself now from a distance, I should say that in addition to my tree love, it arose from my own preoccupation with Lord of the Rings, the knowledge that it would be finished in great detail or not at all. Anyway, he was afraid that he would never finish the Lord of the Rings, just like Niggle was afraid he would never finish the tree. So that idea that you can just invest so much time into getting something perfect and multifaceted and highly detailed that it could be all absorbing and that you would never live to see it finished was a fear that Niggle had. But when you do finish it, or even if you don't finish it, your approach of the finished artistic project, you'll be greeted with it in the afterlife or something like that. I think Tolkien actually believes something like that, like somewhere in the outer world or the afterlife or some collective unconscious or something, that that his world existed in the detail that he had been trying to achieve.
But this kind of sums up Lothlorien almost, as far as in an abstract kind of way,
Yeah, as a place, the Elder Days never really died there.
Yeah. Like the end of the chapter here, where basically Aragorn was like, that was the last time he ever went to Lothlorien, and
right. That's kind of sad. Why do you think that is? It's like he had no reason to go back there.
Like Tolkien actually was really good at summing up like that. I don't want to say it's melancholy, but he was really good at turning a phrase like that, like
never again as a living man. Yeah, that struck me too. Like, oh, that's poignant.
Like damn.
It almost seemed almost unnecessarily poignant in the sense.
Yeah, maybe a little too fucking poignant.
I mean, I'm like, there's probably a lot of places he's been that when he left that place, that will have been the last time he will have ever seen that place, because he would just never go back there. So when I was a kid in the 70s, we lived in outside of Philadelphia, a little town called Wallingford, in a little house.
Right.
And a few years ago, I was driving with my family, with Kim and I. We were driving through that part of the country. I'm like, I want to go see that house I used to live in. It was a pretty memorable place. So I drove up to the house, and this woman comes out of the garage, and she's like, "Can I help you?" I was like, "Oh, sorry. I used to live here like 40 years ago." And she's like, "Oh, no way." And so we discovered that her father bought that house from my dad.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, "You want to come in and see the house?" I was like, "Sure." So I actually walked through that house that I hadn't been in since like 1978.
You know what you should have done? Walk through like, Jesus Christ, lady, do you own a broom?
No, it actually looked really nice.
No, I know, but you know what I'm saying? Just like completely like just
they modernized and made it all open concept a little bit within reason.
But she should have been like she like let you in and been all kind, and you're like oh God, what smells?
It's like, what have you done?
What have you done to this place? This is awful.
My childhood dreams are shattered thanks to you and your attempts to redecorate.
I don't remember anything about this house. Thanks a lot, lady.
But I went up to my old bedroom and I was like, last time was this reminds me of this poignancy. It's like the last time I was in this bedroom was like literally 40 years ago.
Wow.
And I was 7.
Wow.
At the time. Yeah.
So. You know, did I tell you, like, so I delivered for Circuit City, right? And one day, across the desk there came 3025 South Torrey Pines, which was my old address.
Oh, right. You delivered Circuit City to your old house?
I did. And it was so weird. Like they did the open concept thing too. Like they opened up like, you know, and like, so like the whole kind of, but I saw the ghosts of all the house.
Right.
Like I could, like, it was weird. If I closed my eyes, it would feel like I can see all the furniture, you know, I can like the archways, like everything.
Like your old pool table.
Yeah. Like it was weird. Like, I mean, it was like literally like, you know, like when they say you see the ghosts of the past, like there was no walls that used to be there. Right.
That's crazy.
But I can feel the walls that were there. It was so, it was
really
weird.
That's really cool.
You know?
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's funny. In my old bedroom that I was talking about upstairs in this Pennsylvania house, they put their bed, just a little twin bed or a little single bed or whatever it was, in the same place that I had my bed.
Like, oh, wow.
And I remember when I was that age, just staring at the wall, staring at the ceiling, laying in bed thinking, I'm just starting out in life. I wonder what my life is going to consist of. And then,
I wonder if I'm going to be here in 40 years.
And I just so wanted to jump back in that bed and look at the ceiling and be like, well, here I am 40 years later. Like,
40 years later, 4 kids and, you know,
mortgage. And, man, my life is just going.
and a Tolkien YouTube page. This is great.
I've really made it.